everyone, it's CricketSong, and today's video is going to be the first video in the Witches Alphabet series, which means today's letter is A. And the word that begins with A that I chose for this video is ancestors. So I'm going to discuss how ancestors play a role or a part in my witchcraft practice. So I want to begin with defining ancestors and how I define that word within my practice. So in order to do that, I want to briefly talk about the spirit realm. So for me, the spirit realm is comprised of all spirit or spiritual entities and energies, such as nature spirits, familiars, the dead, the ancestors, any non-physical entities, angels, demons, anything of that sort would, for me, fall into spirit or spiritual realm. Now, I know that many witches define ancestors as different than I do, so I want to sort of make a difference between ancestors and beloved dead. Some people say ancestors and they define it between the mighty dead and the beloved dead. I guess that's sort of what I'm talking about here. When I discuss ancestors, I'm not talking about my familia heritage, my family members who have died. That's my beloved dead. Ancestors, for me, comprise the spiritual energies of the witches who have passed on, who have died before me. So when I'm working with ancestors, I'm working with the spirits of witches who have died, witches that I choose to work with. And I believe, but I define them as ancestors. And I believe we have the right, we have the power to determine which spiritual entities we work with. And this goes the same for, beloved dead. Just because a beloved dead may approach me doesn't mean I necessarily have to work with them. Because honestly, there's some family members who have died that I would choose not to work with. The same goes for ancestors. Now, I tend to choose to work with the ancestors because they identified as witches and they are aligned with the energies that I would be working with when I work my craft. The ancestors recognize magic, recognize the flow and ebb of energy. They recognize what spells are, and I align myself, my personal energy, with them when I'm looking to cast a spell or to work magic. For me, I find that when I called forth the ancestors, when I established a relationship with them, my magic and my magical workings became more successful from my perspective. And I believe that is due to the fact that I do align myself with this pool of energy. When I was working with Lunar Wisdom Coven, we worked with the ancestors. And again, it from my perspective, it made the energies and the magical workings feel more powerful, more charged, and therefore our magics and our spell castings, from my perspective, were more successful. I don't believe a witch has to, or it's necessary for a witch to work with the ancestors in order for their magic or their spell work to be more successful. I don't feel that it's necessary, but I do believe it's a benefit. How I work with the ancestors. first I identify which spiritual entities of the ancestors I want to work with. And I did this by going into a meditative state and putting the request out that I desired to work with the ancestors. And then whichever spiritual entities came forth, I established a relationship with the ones I chose to work with, the ones that I felt were most aligned with my own beliefs and energies, which meant that I did some research. I researched as much as I could, because some of the ancestors that stepped forth, I couldn't find any information on them. So in that case, I took it upon myself to establish a relationship and decided if that spiritual entity was one that I decided to work with. And I established that relationship the same I would any spiritual entity, meditate with them. If I found some historical information or any information about that specific entity or person when they were alive, I did my best to sort of bring in items or ideas or concepts or visit places that were aligned with that individual, like places that they lived or a place that they were born, or their grave if I was able to do that, and spend time aligning myself with that specific energy so that I could establish a relationship with them. It's the same I do with any spiritual entity that comes forth that I want to work with or I decide I want to work with. I do that same thing. I give offerings, I do meditations, things of that nature, so that I am able to align with that energy and work with it. I really am interested in your experience with ancestors or the mighty dead, however you title that pool of spiritual entities that you work with. Please share your experiences, or if you have questions, please put them in the comments below. I'm looking forward to reading your input, your thoughts, your experiences. Until next time, I love you. Mwah. Blessed be.